So what evidence have we got from this? Is it sort of online thing that they're going to? Because obviously the churches have been closed. What evidence have we got for this?
Yeah, I mean, it is online. It's basically a survey that's been done during the pandemic, kind of looking at the impact of the pandemic. And there's kind of good news and bad news if you're a Christian or a person of faith, that there is a movement, it seems, that the younger generation, so below millennials, seem to be more interested in faith than they used to be. Millennials a bit less. And then you go up the generations, you've got to get to sort of plus 60 before you get interested again.
Yeah.
So the sort of middle area, there's generally a decline in interest, but there's this kind of significant uptick in the sort of teenager area. And I think that's what we've been seeing as kind of local churches, that you've got the sort of a bit of the kind of tail end of the millennials and the teenagers. You've got a post-Christian generation. So you basically haven't got the prejudices. You haven't sort of dismissed Christianity because you probably haven't even heard of it. You've heard of it as a concept, but not sort of, what it's talking about. So I think you've got that at play, that you've got people who are completely unaware about kind of what do Christians believe. So they're kind of intrigued. And I think the pandemic has slightly accelerated that. It's allowed people to kind of browse and graze Christianity without actually having to get very committed. So you can look online at all the fantastic online services they are, show a bit of interest. Doesn't represent much commitment, but you can kind of look without touching. You can sort of browse and see what's on offer. You can do it anonymously pretty much.
Sure.
So I
Now,
think that's all help.
of itself, that is a good thing. It's nice to be able to browse and touch. Now, the pandemic must have played a part in this, because during the pandemic, what they will have seen, these younger people, they would have seen an awful lot of suffering, but they would have seen an awful lot of people doing things above and beyond the call of duty. Maybe people that they know, a lot of the young people I've spoken to on this show who are volunteering, they're working from home, and they're suddenly thinking, actually, working from home is quite an easy thing, because I actually find I'm getting my work done a lot quicker. I've got 2 afternoons free. I'm looking at the world and thinking, I don't feel right just sitting here, and they're going out and they're volunteering. And if they tell their mates they're volunteering, then that's brilliant. That might put them all of these kids in the frame of mind thinking, oh, actually, so doing good, it's not a bad thing, and charity is a good thing, and that kind of leads you to, almost inadvertently, it leads you to sort of spirituality and Christianity.
Yeah, no, it might do. I mean, but to be fair, at all times, most people have a sense of good and bad. It's just a question of sort of why you would do it and quite where the lines fall. But I think what is happening during the pandemic is that people, it's kind of raising questions about existence. What are we here for? Do we have the answer to all of the world's problems? Can we solve everything with science? And I think in a weird way, although the pandemic has been a fantastic scientific effort in terms of producing the vaccine, it showed us that we're not really in control. Individually, something can overcome us quite quickly, but as a whole civilization, the pandemic has basically brought us under its control, while we sort of flounder around trying to find our way out of it. And I think that makes people seek for something higher, to say, well, if I'm not in control and science doesn't have all the answers, does God have the answers? But it also raised questions about suffering, which kind of sends you in one direction or the other. You either say suffering's terrible, God must be terrible, or you might say suffering's terrible, I think I need to find something that's better than this life. And you find it in Jesus Christ and his life and death and resurrection and what he offers you in terms of forgiveness and so on. And, hopefully more people will go that way than I don't like this, so I'm giving up on God entirely.
Sure. Well, what I've seen a lot on social media, in actual fact, is people saying, I'm very lucky in that I don't have COVID. I'm not ill. However, I'm incredibly lonely. I'm stuck in this little flat during these lockdowns. I don't have contact with the normal comforts of human comfort that I would have. And then you'll see it happening. People saying, do you know what? I've started thinking more and more about where other comforts could come from, where other, what other stuff there is out there to help me when I'm troubled in my mind.
Yeah, I really think you're onto something there, because as completely separate from this survey, there's been lots of research that showed that loneliness amongst teenagers and early 20s is much higher, in fact, even during the pandemic, than the kind of over 70s. in a sense, not to put it too crudely, they've kind of got used to it. If you're a bit older, so it is very difficult for some people who are older in the pandemic. But for some of them, they've come to terms with it. Whereas for younger people, loneliness is kind of profound and something they haven't had to deal with before. I know most young people are not completely on their own, but basically isolation from other peer group. And I think, loneliness is, as you say, quite significant in terms of people searching for meaning and connection. And I think we find that in God, and we find that through the Christian faith.
Well, it is one of the things that you kind of don't think about all the time. But the one thing about being a person of faith, a Christian, whatever you want to call yourself, is you're actually never alone. You're never on your own.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great comforts that religious people sort of take for granted. You might be lonely, but you're never alone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is the thing. You're never alone in the sense that God is always with you. But also in almost all cases, and particularly now with electronics, you're never disconnected from God's people. So you can always find a group of people who are Christians who you can have that in common with, even if you have nothing else in common with them. So you find a Christian community. It's mostly virtual since March, but you can at least find a community you can be part of who will love and accept you. But yeah, I mean, as you brilliantly say, you're never alone because God's always with you.
Well, let's hope that some of these people, these Gen Z people, get through this terrible time with that, and just hold on to that, and maybe then look into a bit further. Because I would say this to them: the churches will open soon. All right, next year the churches will be open. If you've been having these things, just wander into one. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be a member. No one's going to check a card with you. No one's going to ask you any questions. There's no shibboleth to get in on it. Just wander in and talk to people and see. It might take it a little bit further.